Hey everybody,
here from
welcome back to
Stella,
my friends in the
culinary.com, and
Brine
it's time
School.
for another installment
Oh,
of
what
Food
is
Science
that, Brine?
101. In this
I'm
multi-video
afraid
series,
you
we'll be
definitely
discussing
haven't
the
right
science
either.
behind
You
the
got
brining
gotten to the
process.
right place.
Now,
There's
since
a
we'll be covering so much
place
material
now.
in this video series,
Sure,
I've
no
created
problem.
one
Bring
singular
something else. I
resource
got
page
things to do
that you
it.
can find at
Children
stellaculinary.com/brine.
here. I have things to do it.
And I
What
very
is
strongly
happening
encourage you
in
to
school?
visit and bookmark
I
this
have nothing to
resource
do with
page,
either.
which will contain
No.
everything you ever want to know about
You
brines, including
want
this
either.
presentation and
I'm
all
afraid
of our
not.
videos
You
within
don't
this
care
series.
for our
Ready?
emergency.
Let's get started.
Ready? I have
So
to my
first,
friend
what is a
either.
brine? Well, in its simplest form,
I have no
a
trouble.
brine is a salt and water solution that food products, most
I
commonly
guess I
meats,
have to do
are
it.
soaked in for
I
a
am
given
right
period
either.
of time
No,
to
I'm
improve the
afraid
product's
not.
overall
You
quality.
took
Now, I
habit
make
in
the
your
distinction
too.
of saying that brines
Really?
improve
That's a
food
shame.
products because
Today
things
we have
other
to
than
school.
proteins or
There's
meat
everyone's more.
can
I'm
be
not really
enhanced
everyone.
through the brining
No.
process,
I
such
don't
as
care who
fruits
I
and
buy
vegetables.
here. No.
But a brine's
Thank you,
most
my friend.
practical application
Hey,
is to enhance
children,
that of a
please
protein,
don't even
which is
forget.
what this video
Of course.
series will
I
mainly
get
explore. Now, why
They're
should you brine
delicious.
something? Well, brining
Okay,
is a
that
great technique that can
okay?
improve the overall
Quietly
quality
here
of
on
a
the
food
rest.
product
Please
with
don't
three
hear
major
your
benefits.
And
Number one is
children.
textural improvement,
That's
especially
all
when it
we're
comes to
with
brining
eatables or
proteins.
for kids who
Number
come
two,
after me.
brines
I
can
fiber
and
for
will
everyone
enhance overall
you know,
flavor.
primary and
Not
secondary.
only does
I
the
guess you
salt
remember,
contained within a
of
brine
course, for
help to
tomorrow.
season the
have
food
for
product, assuming the brine is applied
Bring it a day.
correctly,
There's
but
a
brines
day
also
actually
commonly
to do
contain
it.
secondary
Not
flavor
have to do
profiles
it.
such as herbs,
What?
spices, and
I think you're
aromatics
giving our
that are
hands for
chosen
trying.
specifically to enhance the overall flavor
Concentrate your
of the food
accounts. I
product
have
being
for
brined.
oxygen.
Number three is by far the biggest
I
reason
have
food is
one
brined,
more minute
and that's
on the
moisture
troll.
retention.
I guess
Especially
you
when it
know
comes
what?
to cooking things that are lean proteins such
All
as
right,
chicken
you have
breast,
one
pork
more
tenderloin,
today.
and fish. Brining allows
I got you, all
proteins
right,
to
please?
retain more moisture throughout the cooking
Alright,
process,
yes,
resulting
you
in
are
a
my
moisture
friend,
finished
Iva.
product. But to understand
Alright,
how a
you
brine
can ask me,
improves a product's
alright?
texture, flavor, and ability to
One
retain
more,
moisture,
one
we
more.
must first
I know
understand how
these are
brines
around
actually work.
100, 200.
So the most
200?
conventional explanation of how
No,
brining
we don't
works
have
describes the
infinite money
movement of
more.
salt and
And
water
of course
into
not.
proteins through a
No,
process
we
called
don't
osmosis.
And
This,
of course,
however,
for
is
everyone here.
incorrect.
No, me?
Brining
No!
actually works through diffusion, not osmosis. And it's important to make
What's
this
going on
distinction
there,
if we are to
Iva?
truly
Don't
understand how
touch
a
you right
brine
in the
works.
history happens here right
First,
now.
let's talk
I guess
diffusion.
her from tweets
Let's
there,
assume
everyone.
that this yellow square here is air trapped in a vacuum. Now, in this air, we have dissolved gas, represented by these red dots. And at this moment, the gas is more heavily concentrated at the bottom left corner
I'm sorry,
of the
I actually
square.
had to do it.
As
I'm
the
sorry,
dissolved
you're
gas
there right
continues
now.
to
You
freely
will
move
catch
around
yourself
in this
right
vacuum
now.
of air, let's think for a second what would happen if a gas molecule started to move towards the bottom left corner of this container.
There, Iva?
Obviously, it would run into some resistance, making the probability of it freely reaching the bottom left corner very unlikely. What's more, as this molecule comes into contact with its neighbor, it will actually ricochet off and travel in the opposite direction of which it was initially moving. So conversely, if a dissolved gas molecule in this container tried to move to the top right corner to an area of lower concentration, it would actually encounter much less resistance, so the probability of it ending up in the top right corner of this container is statistically pretty good. And this is basically diffusion in action. If given enough time, these molecules will move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Now, osmosis, on the other hand, deals specifically with the movement of water from an area of higher concentration to that of a lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Now, before we move on, let's go over some quick terminology here so you can better understand this process. First, whenever you have less of something dissolved into more of something, you have a solution. So a brine can actually be thought of as a saltwater solution in which salt is dissolved in the water. The thing you have more of in a solution, in this case the water, is called the solvent. And the thing you have less of, in this case the salt, is called the solute. To demonstrate this, let's draw a little diagram here. So here I have a container of some water, And since we're going to assume that we will be dissolving something into this water, the water will be our solvent. Now, in this water, we have a semi-permeable membrane, meaning some things can pass through the membrane while others can't. And this membrane separates the water molecules into two distinct areas. On the right-hand side of this membrane, we have larger solute molecules that are too large to fit through the opening in the semi-permeable membrane. For osmosis to occur, you must have a semi-permeable membrane in which the solvent can pass through, in this case the water, but the solute can't. The reason why osmosis works is because when you have billions of molecules randomly bouncing around, some of the solute molecules will randomly be approaching the membrane's opening, shown here on the right-hand side, while a water molecule is approaching the opening on the same side of the membrane. So even though the large solute molecule isn't completely blocking the membrane's opening, it is still large enough to block certain approach paths. So as a water molecule starts to randomly move towards the membrane's opening, there's a good chance or probability it will run into a larger solute molecule and ricochet off, never making it to the other side. It's important to understand that osmosis is based purely on the probability of water's molecular movement over time. Because the solute molecules on the right side of the membrane are too large to pass through the membrane's opening, it is more likely over time that more water on the left-hand side of the membrane will pass through to the right than water on the right will pass to the left. This process of water being statistically more likely to move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration while passing through a semi-permeable membrane is the definition of osmosis. So if osmosis did occur during the brining process, here's how it would actually work. If you placed a chicken breast into a brine, the salt would be considered the solute. That would mean, if osmosis really were at play, the water contained within the chicken breast would actually have to move outward into the brine. To break this down a little further, if osmosis occurred during the brining process, two things would have to be true. Number one, the solute, or the dissolved salt, would have to be too large to penetrate a protein's outer membrane. We know this is false because the interior of brine meat can obviously become salty. Number two, if the salt was actually too big to pass through the protein's outer membrane, which it's not, then the moisture within the object being brine would actually flow outward into the solution. Since in osmosis, water will flow through a semi-permeable membrane from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. And remember that semi-permeable membrane, its opening must be too small to allow the solute or the salt through, which is not the case. But since we know through basic observation that both water and salt enter into the protein during the brining process, we can conclude that brining works through diffusion, not osmosis. Now, the natural question is, well, why do we need salt in the first place? I mean, besides seasoning, of course. If water moves into a protein through diffusion, why can't we just soak a protein in water and have it become juicier? And the answer to this is, well, technically you can. You can soak a protein in pure water and it will swell, taking on additional water weight, but not as much as if you added salt to the soaking liquid. And more specifically, proteins also will not bind to water as effectively during the cooking process unless salt is present. Now, why this actually occurs is extremely interesting, and we'll be discussing this process in more depth in part 2 of this brining video.